Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And let me say, first of all, to my colleague and friend, Senator Carper, I couldn't agree with him more. We already had a need for worker retraining because we didn't have the kind of skills we needed to fill the jobs in our economy. And now we're going to need even more. So the Jobs Act is a good way to do that. Allow Pell Grants to be used for short-term training programs. There are lots of other ways, but I think this will be very important, and you're going to play a leading role in that. I know, Secretary Scalia, because I know you have been involved in training. Let me just, if I could, talk for a second about how we got to where we are, because it's 10 weeks into this unemployment insurance program that was started in the CARES Act, and where we go from here. We chose $600 for a simple reason, and Senator Wyden, I think, said it well when he said it was rough justice. It was rough justice for trying to make sure that people, on average, had wage replacement. But I think, for everybody, what we all were looking for was wage replacement. And $600 is well above wage replacement for a lot of people. And the University of Chicago study that was cited earlier today is that 60 to 70% of the people on unemployment insurance making $600 federal addition to the state benefit, 60 to 70% of them are making more on UI than they would make in their previous jobs. So there is this issue. And look, the last session I had with anybody in Ohio was on Monday before I flew here. It was a small business. And the third thing the guy said to me was what you hear from small businesses when you do your NFIB conference calls, which I do periodically and so on, which is, I now am finally able to reopen and we're starting to get business back. Things are going better, but I can't find people. And people are telling me, I'd rather stay on UI because I can make more money there. And well, you know, if 60 to 70% of people are making more money on UI than they're making their jobs, that's going to happen. I agree people actually want to go back to work. I think it's wrong to say that people want to stay on UI. I think people like being at work, but when they can make a lot more money not being at work, it does create a disincentive. I had a town hall recently, teletown hall. I'm doing these pretty much every week now. And a woman called in and said, I've got 2 daughters, one of whom is working, one's on UI, and the one on UI is making more than the one who's working. And the one who's working is upset about that because they had jobs that were comparable prior to this. So, I mean, this is a reality. We have to face it. But it was all good intentions because we were trying to find that average wage was about $600 per month additional federal benefit to get the average wage so it would be comparable. And so I think it was rough justice, but I think now we're in a different situation. One, we've got an economy that is starting to grow. And the numbers for last month were really surprising. We thought we'd lose 7.5 million jobs, and we added 2.5 million jobs. I mean, no one should say that's not great news. However, there's still 21 million people who are on the unemployment rolls. It's over 13% unemployment. For African Americans, even higher. Hispanics, even higher. So we do have a huge problem here. The $600 was necessary, in my view, to get us started in this. But now we have a situation where the economy is starting to reopen and people are looking for workers. Second, remember back then, we really didn't want people to stay at work because we were encouraging people to go home. In other words, we were shutting down the economy. Except for essential businesses, we were actually encouraging people not to be working. Now we want to encourage people to work. So this is why I come to this proposal I've been working on for the past couple of months with you and other people, which is to say, for people who are on unemployment making whatever the state benefit is, usually it's about $360 on average from the state, plus they're making the $600 federal addition to that. For those people who are on unemployment making more than they could make at work, which is 60 to 70% of those people, why not give them a bonus to go back to work? That bonus could come out of the $600. That bonus, I've suggested, could be $450. Why? Because that's the amount which would make people even if they were on minimum wage in this country. So anybody on minimum wage would be able to go back and make just as much, if not more, in the private sector than they could make on UI if they had this bonus. For us, it would be a 6-week program. So it's a transition back to work. I really like it because I think it gets people back to work at a time we need them in the economy, but also because it's good for workers. Work is where most people get their health care, right, Mr. Secretary? Most people in America get their health care from work, and they lose it when they lose their job, unless they've got a great company that's furloughing them and paying their health care, but that's rare. Second, that's where they get their retirement if they have a retirement account. Typically, it's a 401k at work. But also, I think the meaning of work is important to people. I think the self-respect you get from going to work is important to people. So we want to encourage people to go back to work. It's clearly good for small businesses who are looking hard for workers right now if they're starting to reopen. And that's good. And of course, it's good for the taxpayer because think about it. If instead of $600, it's $450, The federal government saves money, but so does the state government, because then the people are off unemployment insurance and back on the payrolls. And they're actually paying taxes, by the way. So even taking out the fact they're now paying taxes and contributing to the economy, that alone, taking them off the federal 600 down to 450, whatever the number is, and Congress may choose another number, and not having the $360 on average state benefit, it's tens of billions of dollars in savings to the state governments and the federal governments, which is savings to the taxpayer. That's a win-win-win. Good for workers, good for businesses, good for the taxpayer. Now, having said all that, what do you think about it, Mr. Secretary? Don't you think that makes sense in order to get people back to work?
I do think it makes sense to get people back to work. We've got to have an unemployment insurance safety net, but for the reasons that you gave, work is even better. And so I look forward to Senator Portman speaking with you and others about what we might do going forward. I'm certainly not here to criticize the CARES Act. I think the CARES Act is a really admirable achievement by the United States government during an extremely difficult time. But if it was rough justice, let's find justice. Let's use these months, these weeks to make things even better. And I think we are in a different
situation. Let's delve into that a little
situation.
bit. I mean, I would love to find justice. In other words, to be able to say, what is wage replacement?
Senator Whitehouse.
But I don't believe that the UI systems around the country, we'll find out from the second panel when they come up to talk, are capable of doing that. I think they're going to want one flat number. They've had enough difficulty doing that. Unfortunately, I think that's where we are. So let's do something that makes sense to deal with the immediate problem we have, to get people back to work and provide an incentive to do so. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Senator Whitehouse.